Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, the host of the Smart Business Revolution podcast. You know, every week I get to talk to smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations like YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, LendingTree, OpenTable, Act Software, and many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects and referral partners. And, you know, big shout out this week going to Laron Hirschkorn. Check out incrementumdigital.com. He introduced us to this week's guest, Kellianne Fedio, when we ran an event a while back. And, you know, I was like, this is a really smart woman. It turns out she's a recovering attorney just like me. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, how she went from practicing law to founding and scaling up her own multi-million-dollar e-commerce brand, and then had a successful 7-figure exit. And now she helps other brands to identify and maximize profit opportunities using Amazon businesses. So we're going to get diving deep into that. And if you want to learn more about her and her new business, go to amazingexits.com, where her and her business partner, Paul Miller, have a groundbreaking podcast, which we're helping them with. Very proud of that, where they share insights and bring on top experts and brands to talk about their journey in e-commerce. You can also go to digitalshelfstrategy.com to connect with Kellianne directly. And before we get into this interview, I will let you know that this episode is brought to you by Rise 25 Media, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, you know what, I'm kind of curious, would podcasts work for me? Well, we say yes, absolutely. I've been saying it for 10 years. It's the best thing you'll ever do. And we specialize with helping B2B businesses with a high client lifetime value. So if you want to learn more, go to rise25media.com, or you can also email us at support@rise25media.com. All right. So Kellianne, super excited to have you on here. And, you know, we connected a couple years back when you came to one of our events that we did. And, you know, you and I have this shared background, recovering attorneys. You practiced law for a number of years and then took a break to raise kids. And after that, you know, like many moms, I'm sure, were kind of curious about, do I go back into practicing law? Do I go into something new? Take me to that point in your journey when, you know, your kids are getting a little bit older and you're trying to decide what to do next, and how you decided, you know, or came up with what ended up being a thriving e-commerce business.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, John. Really excited to be here. You know, I've shared this story so many times, and, you know, I still to this day look back and think, oh my gosh, how have I lived such a lifetime of like two separate lives, right? From being an attorney, when you go to law school and you practice law, you're pretty much thinking that that's going to be it for the rest of your life, right? At least, you know, that's what I thought when I spent $100,000 on law school, that I wasn't going to be leaving it anytime soon.
Right.
And now I look back to that life and it seems like a whole completely different life. So it's crazy. But, you know, I wouldn't change it for anything. I really feel like the skills that I received, you know, going to law school, practicing law for almost 10 years, you know, molded me into the person that I am today, and continues to impact me. It makes you be very analytical and be able to evaluate situations, evaluate facts, you know, make arguments and conclusions. Sometimes that can get me into trouble because I can be quite argumentative at times. But I try
Did you do litigation?
I did. Civil litigation, insurance defense. Yeah. So a lot of big egos, a lot of contentiousness, and arguing and all that kind of stuff. So that part I like debating, but I don't like arguing when it's just ego driven. So that part I don't miss. But I came out of law school at a time where the job market was, for attorneys, especially in California, was very bleak. And I was lucky enough to get a job at the biggest civil lit firm at that time in Sacramento, where I lived, and really got thrown in the deep end very early on, which was great. I got real practical experience. I wasn't stuck in the law library for the first couple of years, which most first-year associates are. So I really gained a lot of experience, and it was, a high stressful career. And, when you're in your 20s and you don't have family or kids or obligations, it's pretty easy to just, work most of your life and, take that home. And that's what I did. And it was great. And I loved it at the time. But after I got married and had children, it was a completely, different story. I really did not enjoy the work. I didn't enjoy it always being in my mind. I could never really focus on the present, being present with my family and with my, with my life at home, because I always had work on the brain.
Litigation in particular is really hard that way, because you're always paranoid about missing a deadline.
Yes. I mean, the deadlines. And again, this was quite a long time ago. And I had a legal secretary, of course, but I was still, always sweating that, missing a deadline, preparing for hearings, for trials, for all that. It just was very stressful. And so, had a real kind of wake up call and, talked it over with my husband. And at the time we didn't know, how we were going to make it work going from 2 incomes to 1. But, he knew that I was pretty miserable what I was doing at the time, because I just really wanted to spend time with my first daughter.
And what was that wake-up call?
The wake-up call was just basically not just knowing, when I was every day I felt like a robot. Like, I would take my daughter to daycare, I would drop her off, I would go to work, I'd come back, I'd sometimes try to work out in between there, pick her up, and then it was just like this robotic act of just trying to feed her, bathe her, put her to bed so I could work some more. And just one particular night, I just remember that I just broke down crying, because I just was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm not even here present with her. Like, all I want to do is I wanted to spend time with her, but I just wanted to get her to bed so that I could get my work done and go to bed and start the whole cycle over day after day. It was like Groundhog Day every day. And I just knew, looking out into the future, that's not the kind of life that I wanted to live. That's not the kind of mother I wanted to be. I knew I wasn't going to be the best version of myself. So, it wasn't like this decision was made overnight. This took probably months of, struggling and inner anguish. And, at first not even telling my husband, because again, it's such a big deal when you go to college and you're preparing to go to law school, which I did from college, and then spending all that money and time, taking the bar exam, passing the bar exam, practicing law. Usually most people don't ever leave, right?
And it's part of your identity too. So
yes,
to say
absolutely.
to other people that you're not going to be a lawyer, they question like, whoa, what's going on here? Why? Who are you?
Exactly. And what are you going to do? And I did, towards the tail end of my career, I did try a whole different area of the law. And I thought that would make me happier, getting out of litigation. But it still involved a lot of travel, and it was a completely new area of law for me. And so it was like, I had, the learning curve, I had to start from the beginning. And so I just, at that point decided, I don't know if I'll ever go back to law, but I can't do it right now.
So you stop and you raise your kids for a while. And then at some point you decide, I'm going to go back to work, but I'm not going to be a lawyer. And so you go down the rabbit hole of figuring out what that'll be next. So what sorts of different areas did you explore, and how did you do that research?
Well, I knew that I wanted to be in business for myself, but I had no clue what that was going to entail. And I also knew that I didn't want to have set hours, that I wanted to be able to, work location independently. So that meant pretty much working from home. So like many people do, I started looking into how can I make money online, working from home, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you type that in as a Google search, you're going to get bombarded with.
You're going to go down a rabbit hole for years and years. Yeah.
Yeah. And it lasted probably, I would say, a good 2 years of going down these different rabbit holes. And, along the way though, I did find some really great communities, online marketing communities, and mentors and training programs, all around, whether it was affiliate marketing or blogging or, being, a coach to others. I tried so many different things, and I did enjoy the journey. So that I'm thankful for, but definitely wasn't making any money during those couple of years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I stumbled upon, the world of e-commerce that things started to change.
And what were your first few products, or how did you step into the world of selling products online?
Well, my first foray into selling products was selling other people's products. And namely, I was doing online arbitrage. So I was basically just finding products that were listed for a price on various websites at a price that I think I could charge higher on a site like Amazon or eBay. So I was basically drop shipping. And, that's when I got my kind of first taste of the power of just selling physical products.
Okay. And so you just any product and just buying them from one place, selling them somewhere else.
Exactly. I did a lot of pet products. I did a lot of like home goods. But basically, there was this whole model at that time that was taught on eBay of drop shipping and being able to sell from other big retail sites like Amazon, like Wayfair, and a lot of other sites that you could, sell on eBay. And as long as you optimized the listings correctly, you could, get that in front of traffic and they would buy, and you would still have it shipped directly from like a Wayfair or an Amazon, and you would really never get questioned. It was quite intriguing, and then of course it got totally saturated, and my account almost got shut down on Amazon because I was also drop shipping on Amazon. And that's when I knew like, okay, I've just kind of found a full-time job for myself. This isn't scalable. This isn't something that I can really see myself doing in the future. So that's when I started looking into, okay, how can I create my own brand of products and sell them on Amazon? Because I knew that was, the place that had all the buyer traffic. And, I started seeing different things about, teachings and courses about selling on Amazon. So I started to go down that route.
So what sorts of categories did you work in? And I should explain for those who aren't familiar with the world of e-commerce, there's this kind of funny thing where, especially in Amazon, people talk more about categories than actual products. Can you kind of explain? It took me a while to realize this, but can you explain a little bit why there is kind of sensitivity around that?
Yeah, well, people think that if you identify the specific product you're selling, that other people are just going to go copy you. And yes, that happens all the time. And, there's lists that go around of hot products to sell in 2019 or 2020. And, that really doesn't work anymore. I think these days you really shouldn't be concerned with sharing your product, because if you're building a true business, you're building a brand, and you've got, a moat around that brand, whether it's intellectual property or it's some kind of product differentiation, or you have a unique, supply chain, something that, makes you immune to not competition completely, but just immune to somebody just slapping a label on a similar product and being able to sell.
So what types of categories and products, if you're willing, did you go into?
Yeah. So when I started my brand, I knew I wanted to start a women's lifestyle brand. So I thought about the market, the people that I wanted to serve, the end user, the customers that I wanted to serve, before I thought about the particular products. And that's what I would recommend, that anybody getting started in e-commerce, you have to find a need or a pain point and then fulfill that with your products. So that's what I did. So I was selling products mostly in the sports and outdoors category, some in the kitchen category. But those were primarily, and then also patio, lawn, and outdoors. So those were like the three main categories that I was selling in.
Okay. And what were some of the challenges that you experienced in moving into developing your own brand?
Oh, so many. It was a whole new skill set to learn. I mean, you have to learn everything from, product manufacturing to sourcing overseas. If you're not manufacturing in the United States, which many products, you have to go overseas to have manufactured. So, developing a supply chain in China, how to, really employ good branding tactics to create the brand, but just to name a few. I mean, there's like a lot of things that you have to learn, of course, with the power of the internet. And there's lots of courses that can help you, and mentors and paid training programs that can help you. So I took a course called Amazing Selling Machine. It's now called Amazing. And that was kind of, like the foundational course that a lot of my friends took as well, that were learning to sell on Amazon.
Okay. And, we're recording this in July of 2020. And so the coronavirus pandemic has been going on for a little while now. There was a lot of disruption in the supply chain for people who are creating, manufacturing products in China. What's the status of that right now, and how are companies coping with that kind of disruption?
Yeah, it's been really challenging. So I sold my brand in February of 2020. And so typically,
good timing.
it was really good timing for me. typically, in January, February, March, you're dealing with, the shutdown of China because of Chinese New Year. And so on top of that, this year we had COVID. And so, many, many, many sellers were scrambling and continue to, try to claw their way out of the situation. It's very difficult, but I think that no matter what, if you can stay the course, e-commerce is still at its infancy. It's, growing by leaps and bounds, especially with COVID. People are realizing the power of online shopping. So, if you can ride through that storm, hopefully, a lot of people will make it, but I know that there's probably many sellers that didn't make it through that. So it really just depends on the relationship you had with a particular supplier in China, if you had alternate sources to manufacture your goods. So it definitely was a trying time for anybody sourcing overseas.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do to prepare for something like of this historic nature. That's for sure.
Yeah. And
maybe
course,
having multiple suppliers is definitely a good one.
Yes, for sure. Having like secondary and tertiary suppliers. But again, China, was shut down just because of their, the impact of COVID on them. And then also with Chinese New Year, or it would have been shut down with Chinese New Year. So it all comes down to proper inventory planning, but nobody could have foreseen this happening. And so, a lot of folks were left with being out of stock. But also it's a great opportunity to pivot and to, think about products that you could develop that would serve, this new economy. What types of people sheltering in place, what types of products, are they using, staying at home. So many different categories have opened up that traditionally might not have been as popular, at least at, the time of year when COVID first hit.
And another big thing that happened that affected a lot of sellers is that Amazon deemed certain categories non-essential, and so they're prioritizing just the essential categories. So even if you had prepared for disruption in the supply chain due to the Chinese New Year and you'd stockpiled inventory, even if you'd done that, all of a sudden, boom, your products weren't shipping because Amazon was, at least in the early days, was prioritizing certain categories, correct?
Yeah, the effects of that lasted, I want to say at least a month or two, while Amazon was prioritizing that. And so, some people got lucky and they happened to be selling what are deemed essential goods. If you happened to be in the beauty category or in the, cleaning category or anything related to disinfecting or cleaning, obviously, you did really well, but most of those folks probably went out of stock too. So, I would say, this was obviously the most challenging year any Amazon or e-commerce seller could face, but there's great lessons to be learned from it and to be, prepared for the future. And so I think there's going to be a lot of sellers that are going to come out, better than ever. And there's going to be people that just give up or have given up already.
Yeah. Given how many people each week, each month were hopping into selling on Amazon or selling in e-commerce in general, is that a good thing that there are going to be fewer people, less competition, or is it going to make that much of a difference?
I don't really think it should make that much of a difference because even though, there's always this talk of, selling on Amazon has become saturated. There's so many people, so many new sellers coming on all the time. The playing field has changed over the past few years, and really to succeed, you have to be running a true business, have a true brand. You can't just slap up any product. And so it really has, in a sense, leveled the playing field in that only people running real businesses are going to survive. And that means you have to have a more sophisticated and strategic approach than what might have worked just a couple years ago.
Right. Now, I'm always curious about this. What are your thoughts on, whether being a lawyer, how it affects you as an entrepreneur? Because I have kind of a split opinion about it. On the one hand, as you pointed out earlier, the law does teach you, and law school teaches you can figure stuff out, so you don't have any doubt that you can figure things out. And I think that's a great thing. On the other hand, it does teach you to be very conservative and careful and plotting and to focus on risks, which a lot of times lawyers are so risk adverse that that they're too slow moving. So your thoughts on, your background as a lawyer and whether that is good preparation for being an entrepreneur?
I definitely think it's great preparation. Like I said earlier, the analytical skills and developing the analytical side of your brain is what I got most out of my lawyer training in law school. And so being able to take any situation and, doing, like a SWOT analysis to look at the strengths and the opportunities and the weaknesses and the threats, and in law, as you know, John, it's never black and white. It's always basically, an analysis of a certain set of facts and drawing a conclusion or making an argument for that conclusion. So I really feel like from an entrepreneurial sense, that's really helpful because it allows you to kind of see the whole picture and to come up with a solution, a creative solution to a problem.
Now, you exited your business in February 2020, which is just historically great time.
Complete coincidence. It was complete coincidence, yes.
Well, talk to me about how you prepared for that. Did a buyer materialize unexpectedly, or were you preparing for a sale? And if so, what were you doing in order to prepare for a sale?
No, I prepared for about 2 years prior to my sale. And that's one of the main things that Paul Miller and I are trying to reach Amazon sellers and teach them about is how critical planning is if you want to maximize the value of your business. And so I would recommend that anybody that's planning on selling their business start to plan as early as possible. At the very least, 12 months, preferably 12 to 18 months before you actually want to have that exit. So I did tons of research and became a student of exit planning. And there, at the time, and still even to this day, the industry on exit planning, especially with respect to just e-commerce and specifically to Amazon businesses, is very, very fragmented. I had to, kind of learn from the ground up. And certainly, when you're working with an intermediary to help you sell your business, they're going to be a tremendous resource of knowledge for you. But you want to be prepared before you ever engage that intermediary. And you want to know not only the vernacular of exits and mergers and acquisitions, but you want to know all the things that you should be focusing on the day-to-day operations of your business that are going to move the needle and help maximize what you're ultimately going to be able to sell that business for.
So when you went through the due diligence process, was there anything that was surprising or unexpected? If you could go through it again, where you would maybe realize, I maybe would have worked on this piece to make sure that this was in place?
The due diligence process, I think for me, it was smooth because, now it doesn't mean it was easy, but it was smooth because I had done my research and planning and I mentally knew what I was in for. I mean, due diligence is a very trying time because that's basically when the acquirer of your business gets to look under the hood and verify everything that you've represented to them about that business and ask you any possible question related to that. So it's a heightened time of sensitivity. It was like an emotional roller coaster during that time, but yet I knew that it was going to be challenging and that I had to have endurance to get through it. And luckily with the M&A advisor that I used to help me sell my business, they really focus on doing all your due diligence up front, meaning before we ever listed, went out to market with my business, we gathered all the appropriate documents and we had, phone conversations about them. And we looked at it through the lens that a buyer would be looking at it to answer the hard questions that can come up.
And where do you find buyers?
Well, it depends on the types of intermediary that you use. So, and that's another thing that Paul and I are really excited to be able to help educate the Amazon seller community about the different types of, exits that you can have and the different types of intermediaries that there are out there. For example, there are websites that you can list your, business on, such as like an Empire Flippers or, website closers, things like that. And then there are business brokers, there are M&A advisors, there are Amazon acquisition companies. And so there's many different ways that you can go about selling your business. And it's really going to depend on the particular business as to what is the best exit strategy and the best intermediary for that business.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the big mistakes you see people making going into an exit? like, for example, not preparing ahead of time, but what else are there?
Yeah, so that's just the biggest one in general, not preparing. I mean, it's not really a sexy topic to, plan and be proactive about exit planning, right? Like, who wants to do that?
Right.
Like, I'd rather focus on, the latest launch or rank strategy on Amazon, right? But specifics within that, and I see this time and time again, and I mention it all the time, but so many sellers do not have clean financials. They do not have their books in order. And not only do they not have their books in order, I mean, they might very well even have a bookkeeper and accountant, but they have no clue what their cash flow is. They have no clue, like, for inventory management or planning, like how much cash are they going to need. And it's kind of like flying by the seat of your pants approach. So really good cash flow management and bookkeeping, clean financials. And that really, what that allows you to do as the business owner is to always know what the value of your business is at any given point in time. And as a business owner, you should always know what the value of perhaps one of your biggest assets is worth.
And we're running a little short on time, so we'll wrap up shortly. But why move from, you'd spent all these years, it's kind of like, you'd gotten your law degree, you'd spent all these years becoming a lawyer, and then you spent all these years getting really good at selling products on Amazon. You sell it, and now you're going into coaching, consulting, helping other sellers. So kind of a new business endeavor. So what drew you? What attracted you to moving into coaching, consulting, helping other sellers, other brands?
Well, I've always had an interest in coaching and consulting, and I've done that all throughout my career as an Amazon entrepreneur, whether it be, friends and helping mentor them or, paid consulting. I've done a lot of that, helping sellers with strategy and helping brands that know nothing about Amazon. I mean, there's so many consumer product brands out there that have great products and they know nothing about Amazon. And so I've had a lot of different engagements, and I love doing that. I love teaching. I love helping people understand the Amazon platform. But, for my current venture with Paul and our Amazing Exits podcast and, wanting to really help sellers, understand that they need to practically plan for exit planning, I'm just really passionate about helping brand owners, maximize the value of their business. This is most likely the biggest financial event that they're ever going to see in their life. It's really, really important, and it could change the whole trajectory of your financial future. And for some, it can mean complete financial freedom, meaning that they never have to work again a day in their life. So, I really want to, get out there in a big way and impress that upon sellers that, you need to take this really seriously. It's super important. You don't just decide one day, you don't wake up and decide, I'm going to sell my business. You need to be planning in advance for that so that you can really maximize every last dollar that you get for the sale of that business.
That's great advice. All right. So we'll wrap things up with the question I always ask, which is, let's pretend, Kelly, we are at an awards banquet, much like the Oscars or the Emmys. You're receiving an award for lifetime achievement for everything you've done up to this point. Who do you thank? Who do you acknowledge in your remarks?
That would definitely have to be my husband. I mean, he's my biggest cheerleader, biggest support. He lets me be not only the wife and mother that I want to be, but also the entrepreneur that's always going to be in me. And, that requires a lot of patience. I still get shiny object syndrome from time to time, and I'm always looking at different businesses, different investments. So he's very patient with that. So definitely my husband.
Oh, cool. Anyone else?
My kids, of course, I have to include them with that. And then, I would say, I'm a big fan of Robert Kiyosaki. I mean, obviously he's not my personal mentor, but his books have had the biggest impact on me in terms of entrepreneurship and what it takes to be financially free. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad, of course, but I love his book, Cash Flow Quadrant. That really teaches you, in order to be financially free, the way that you need to make money. And you're never going to get there if you're an employee or a really small business owner that doesn't have, scale. So, that's really what I strive to do in everything I do now with regard to investing in business, is make sure that I'm on the right side of the quadrant.
Yeah. Good advice. Good book resources. All right. Kelly, where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, reach out?
Well, they can first and foremost go to amazingexits.com and enter their email. Right now, we just have a landing page, but we're working on our website, and we're going to have a really cool resource there when you sign up for our email list. It's going to be an exit readiness assessment, and that's going to really give you some keen insight into where you're at in the exit planning stage for your business. And also, if they want individual consulting, they can go to Digital Shelf Strategy. And I offer a complimentary 15-minute discovery call, and, really kind of try to pinpoint, what are the hidden profit opportunities in your business, what your Amazon business needs. Between Paul and I, we have every resource that any Amazon seller would ever need to not only run their business, optimize their business, maximize the profitability in their business, but also sell it for a big payday. So Digital Shelf Strategy and amazing exits.
And really, it's, I think it's underappreciated how much can be accomplished in that amount of time. Because we were just talking this morning about how you helped another seller whose sales were completely halted. And in 5 minutes, you identified what the problem was. And so when you take someone like yourself, who's got years of experience and years of looking at other businesses, in a couple of minutes, it can save someone hours and hours of trying to diagnose the problem themselves because of the level of experience. So I think that's great.
That's a great point. And that's exactly what I love doing. I love getting in there and looking at the big picture and diagnosing exactly what an Amazon seller needs to focus on to move the needle in their business. And that's all with an exit in mind. Whether you ever decide to sell your business, you still want to be generating the most cash that you can from it and the most profit.
And
that's what I love helping people.
That's a great point, because, a lot of times people, having gone through the process of making their business more ready for an exit, they discover that they enjoy it more because they're less involved in the weeds, and it runs better and it spits off more cash.
Exactly. That's the whole point. So just that you have options.
Right. All right, Kelly, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.